All right, what's up, guys? How's it going? Good to see you. I'm in a different location, different part of the basement. Got a few more kind of books behind me here so you can see some stuff because this video is a little different. I'm not doing an unboxing. I am talking about the Farseer Trilogy by Robin Hobb. I just finished reading it a couple days ago, finished the last book, Assassin's Quest, and it had me feeling a bunch of different ways. And I wanted to do a video just to kind of share some of those thoughts and to hear kind of about maybe some of your experiences and what your thoughts are. So these are the only 3 books that I've read so far of Robin Hobb's, and certainly, you know, within the realm of the Elderlings, which I understand it's like, I don't know, 16 or 17 books. So of all that, right, these are the first 3. So it's the Farseer Trilogy, and you can see they get thicker. So this was the first book, Assassin's Apprentice, and then the second book, Royal Assassin, and then the third book, Assassin's Quest. Just the page count like grew exponentially, it seems. But you know, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'll get into the bad and the good, bad and ugly, all that stuff. But yeah, overall, I love this series. I love it so much, and I love Robin Hobb so much. So I'm glad that I did finally get around to this and finally read it. So I'm gonna try to do like some non-spoilery stuff first, and then maybe, you know, get into some spoilers as the video goes on a little bit. That way, if anybody hasn't read it yet and they don't really want to get into any spoilers, you don't have to do that. You can stop watching. I'll give you a warning. So, you know, the first thing that's really struck me in this series is that these were published in 1995, 96, and 97, I think. So kind of a 3-year period of time when all these came out. And I was blown away at how many works I've read since then, you know, over the last 30 years, that have like clear roots in this story. And let me maybe say that a different way, because I don't know for certain, right, if, you know, let's say J.K. Rowling in the Harry Potter books, or, you know, Brandon Sanderson, for example, I don't know for certain that they trace it back to Robin Hobb, some of the aspects that I noticed in here that also happened in those other book series. But the fact is, it happened in here, right? And it happened, you know, chronologically before those other books came out. And so, you know, I think it stands to reason that this was likely an influence in some form or fashion. So, I mean, a couple of those were, like I said, Harry Potter. So there were some things that happened here that were, you know, just reminded me so much of some of the stuff that goes on in Harry Potter with, you know, like the occlumency lessons, right? That Harry's getting from Snape and stuff, and you know, and that kind of stuff is in here. You know, one of the things that reminded me of Sanderson, and it's so backwards because like I read sort of the stuff that comes after this. I read it first, so, you know, in my mind I'm thinking, oh, she did that like Sanderson, but really, like, you have to reverse that and flip it around. You know, like some of the little, I forget what it's called, but basically at the beginning of each chapter, you know, there'll be like a section of text that sort of is giving world building or foreshadowing or some sort of other context, and that happens, you know, in sort of, you know, at the very beginning of each chapter, right? There's a little blurb like that, and it's like, maybe it doesn't mean that much to you to begin with, but on a second read through or in hindsight, you know, it's like a light bulb moment. So anyway, so that kind of thing, and the world building in general too, you know, and then there's like Patrick Rothfuss, Name of the Wind, just the fact that you've got a narrator. It's a first-person book, and it's the story sort of being told or written, you know, by the character from the future, right? I mean, just that whole sort of premise. You know, it's done differently in Name of the Wind, but the same idea, right? Like, you know, this character lives through what you're reading because the character is who's telling you about it. You don't know what state they're in or what, you know, what's happened, but you know that they're at least alive. They're telling the story, which is interesting. And certainly that's not original to, you know, to Robin Hobb and to Farseer. but it's just a connection that I made. And then also just the entire, if you've read Name of the Wind, some of the love interest with Denna, and sort of this sort of sort of almost a tragic love story where it's kind of like ships crossing in the night, a little bit of that, and like I just felt like there were some similarities between the character in this book, Molly, and Denna. Not giving any spoilers on how that ends up or anything. Just the fact that your main character sort of meets a girl and then kind of starts having a relationship and kind of going down to the town, Buckkeep town in this case, to spend time and kind of build that relationship. So anyway, the point is there's some definite, and also the prose. I mean, Rothfuss has beautiful prose as well. And Robin Hobb, I mean, that's like one of the huge strengths of these books. I'm telling you, the prose is just fantastic. It's one of the things that sort of offsets some of the weaknesses that I think this series has. And one of those weaknesses is, just look at this. I'm not scared of big books, guys. I love big books. These get big, and the problem, okay, if we call it I'm using the word problem loosely here, okay? It's not necessarily a problem, but a critique, I suppose, that I could make is that, for the 1,000 pages, particularly in Assassin's Quest, 1,000 pages, I could probably write down the plot of this book in a handful of bullet points on a sheet of paper. So there's just not that much that happens. And there's a lot of pages and a lot of words that it takes to do that. But that being said, I loved every second of it. I didn't love every second of it. Okay, there are some things, and I'll talk about them maybe in the spoilery section, but some things I didn't necessarily love, but you get what I mean, right? Like this, it didn't feel like a 1,000-page book. But, because it's interesting and you like the characters a lot. The characters are definitely a strong suit here. Okay, I think I'm kind of rambling now. So I'm going to go ahead and go into maybe some spoilers now. So you've been warned. If you don't want any spoilers, just stop watching. You don't have to watch. But yeah, anyway, high-level summary is I really like them. And I liked the first 2 books a lot. Specifically, and the third one I liked, but it was the least satisfying to me. Certainly the way it ended, and the way that some of the different character arcs we follow along ended or are left at the end of the book, they were not as satisfying to me as sort of where we left off in the first 2 books. So let's see here. All right, so some spoilers. First of all, these books do the best job out of any fantasy novels I've ever read on the animal companion stuff, right? I mean, it's just phenomenal. Robin Hobb starts hitting you early, right, in book 1 with Nosy and the other dog. I forget its name now, but basically these little dogs that Fitz is bonding to and has a relationship with, and then they meet these tragic ends, and it's just heartbreaking. It rips your heart out of your chest, and it's it's a fictional dog in a fantasy novel. And I'm telling you, you just want to pet these dogs. And in this book, Royal Assassin, okay, and I love so much that Folio Society put the wolf on the cover, because Nightblood, you meet Nightblood here, and he is fantastic. I mean, I remember when I was reading the part where Fitz had sort of decided he wasn't going to keep the wolf. This was before you knew it was Nightblood. And Fitz decides he's not going to keep him, and he's taking him out to the woods to basically, leave him out there so he can go be a wolf and kind of enjoy his life. I was so torn. And so I was I don't want him to get rid of the wolf. I want him to keep the wolf, Fitz just stopped listening to Burrich. Burrich is talking about how bad the wit is, and telling you that you're going to turn into a beast, which, I guess there's some validity to that. But yeah, anyway, I was just thrilled when Nightblood comes back, saves Fitz, helps Fitz, you know, and they really embrace that bond. And then I've just got to add this too, like specifically in Royal Assassin, the second book of the series, the ending of that book, it was my favorite. It was my favorite by far of the whole trilogy. It was so good, and you know, the way you get the chapter headers, those little, whatever they're called, epigraphs, I don't know, whatever they're called, okay? The world building, the flavor, the little paragraphs of foreshadowing that you get at the beginning of the chapters, leading up to the end of the book. You know, I was starting to piece it together, and you're starting to get this, something's up with the wit, you know, they're always talking about you gotta hang them over water, and you gotta cut them into pieces and burn them and bury them, right? You can't just bury somebody that's got the wit, right? And that's like the folklore and the superstition, and you know, and then just that final scene of like Chade and Burrich like out at the graveyard digging. I mean, you know, and I love horror books and I love gothic horror, and it's like that scene to me is just so awesome. I mean, just, you know, sneaking out, digging up a grave in the middle of the night, you know, and the fact that it is supercharged emotionally, right? Because you care about every one of these characters. You care about Fitz, you care about Burrich, you care about Chade, you care about Patience, right? Like all these people and all the emotions they're feeling and that you're feeling through them. It was awesome. It was fantastic. I mean, I was like, my mind was reeling for a couple days after I finished the second book. So definitely a highlight. Definitely a highlight. And that bond, I mean, really, that's one of the best parts of the third book, is that Assassin's Quest. I mean, there's just so much travel, right? So much travel to the you know, the Mountain Kingdom and even further than that. And you know, and you're right there in Fitz's point of view. You're traveling cross country through the snow with Nightblood, and it's awesome. I mean, that's what, like, when I say I enjoyed, you know, reading this, like on one hand, you could look at this as like, okay, it's 1,000 pages of you know, of walking through the snow, feeling sorry for yourself, hunting with Nightblood, and yeah, you know, and that's about it, right? And then some not very satisfying ending, right? And it's like, what's the appeal of that? And the appeal is that you feel like Nightblood is like your friend, and Fitz too, and you feel and you grow so close to these characters because you're zoomed in as far as you can zoom, which is awesome. So let's see here. I've got some notes here. You know, the character relationships are just so fascinating, right? Like Chade, I love Chade. What a character. And I love Chade. I love how Chade goes from, you know, the cool, you know, in a secret room in the keep, kind of behind the curtains, like, you know, like we don't even know how to read. Chade's awesome, right? I mean, that's you're learning to be an assassin. You're learning all this cool stuff, all the intrigue, the court intrigue, things like that. You know, Burrich, oh my goodness. You know, there's just so much complexity to these characters. You know, I love Burrich and Chade so much, but they also frustrate me, and I want to shake them. And I want to shake Fitz, you know? I mean, Fitz has got to be one of the most frustrating, like, protagonist, main character in a series I've ever read. You know, because he's just, like, so wrong about things sometimes, which, you know, is, again, I think it's actually a strength because it makes it a realistic character. You know, you enjoy it, you know, and it also, you know, introduced some irony and some, you know, this deep, unsettling feeling sometimes when you're like, oh my gosh, like I read, like there's a scene in the third book where, like, the fool is like obviously, you know, obviously like being basically controlled by the skill, by Regal or someone in his coterie, and he's like being weird and talking to Fitz and asking, like, where's Molly? How can I find her? And it's like so obvious to the reader, like, you know, oh my gosh, Fitz, don't answer that question, you know. And he's like, he doesn't even notice it's happening. Like, of course, it's an issue. So, just stuff like that. Let's see. So I guess my biggest complaint, or to me, the biggest con or downside of the series, and it really is the worst in the third book. Okay, it's the plot issue, and it's the issue of and maybe I'm just spoiled from reading a bunch of Sanderson stuff, because Sanderson is like so good at doing this everybody's arc that's going to happen, and then kind of doing little pieces of it all along the way of a book you're reading, and it's like, and the big payoff at the end, and the feeling I got reading particularly Assassin's Quest is that Robin Hobb really loves writing, and she got lost in the joy of typing all these words. And she told a fantastic story, and it's a fun world, and you feel like you just spent months trekking in the snow, and so it really sets the mood and the feeling for the book. But I mean, there's literally a point, somewhere around here, right? Somewhere around, I don't know, page 800 or 900, where there's this rushed 2-page scene where, it felt like, oh goodness, I'm getting to the end of the book and I just need to answer a bunch of these loose ends, right? There's a bunch of questions out there, and how did certain things happen? Because again, it's first person, it's all Fitz's point of view, so you don't know what the bad guys are doing, you don't know why they're doing it, that kind of thing. So there was a point where it's like, oh, the fool was connected via the skill to Regal and his coterie, and because they connected, the fool got some insight into their minds, and so he's telling Fitz all this stuff and answering all these questions, and it's just like a machine gun, here's a page of exposition kind of explaining and tying up a bunch of loose ends, and it just wasn't that satisfying to me. And then the same with the way things end, and you go to the end and it's like Fitz is gonna go be, Fitz is like a hermit, and no one even knows he's alive, and all the characters that you love and you want them to know he's alive, they don't, or if they do, they have no involvement with him anymore, outside of Chade exchanging some letters with him or not even letters, indirect stuff, through Starling sending stuff. And so that just felt really disappointing to me. Okay, this character that I've just spent 3 books getting to know and love, and okay, I love he's with Nighteyes. Okay, they've found kind of their peace, and they're not killing people all the time anymore. So that's great, But it was just something that wasn't satisfying about, Molly and Burrich don't even know he's alive. Patience doesn't know he's alive, most likely. I mean, we think Chade knows he's alive. Pretty sure he does. And then Starling, and then nobody doesn't get any credit for any of the stuff that he did, which, speaking of the stuff that he did, well, okay, let me just not get too lost in jumping around here. Okay, so that was a gripe, but I've kind of come to terms with that particular gripe, because and referring to Fitz being a hermit and just sort of how things were left at the end, because I came to understand recently that there's 14 other books in this, realm of the Elderlings set, and there's more books with Fitz as a character. So, that's not the end of Fitz's story. And if that's true, which I think it is, then I can get more comfortable with that. I can be okay that that's just where this one ends, When I read it, when I first finished it though, and I'm thinking, this is just the end of it, and this is this is all I get of Fitz's story, that, it was disappointing, and it didn't feel like a very satisfying ending. But I'm holding out hope that there are more books, there's plenty more books, so I'm hoping that will be remedied at least. But I was just then talking about Starling, and that reminded me of another sort of gripe I had, which was the whole Kettle plot line, right? And how Kettle, or Kestrel, just kind of, she comes in this book, and and maybe I missed stuff. I mean, it's possible, guys. Let me know in the comments. Maybe maybe Kettle was foreshadowed in book 1 or book 2, but I didn't catch it. And because I didn't catch it, she felt like a super random Deus Ex Machina type, like, oh, I need some way to, like, you know, tie this whole thing up. And so this character was thrown in, and she ended up being this, like, huge key to the whole thing. And again, that just wasn't satisfying to me. So, you know, that could be a me thing. Like, maybe there were clues kind of throughout that I could have, you know, should have put that kind of thing together. It just didn't come across that way to me, at least in my first time going through it, right? Hey guys, I forgot to say a couple things here. One is that one of the things I really liked about this book series and Robin Hobb's writing, and it's something that I feel like maybe Sanderson picked up from Robin Hobb actually, is this feeling of like there are legends and stories about these characters that are being told like in the world at the time, you know, like in the book you're reading. So it's like, you know, Fitz will fight in a battle, and then, you know, years later in the book, there are like songs being sung about that battle, and there are, you know, with Starling being a minstrel, right? You get a lot of insight into this and how just the whole idea of sort of, you know, your deeds and your acts growing out, you know, bigger than life, right, larger than life, and Fitz sort of hearing these stories and being, you know, it's just fascinating. It's really interesting to see, you know, how Starling early on in the third book, right, is looking for her big song, and she thinks Fitz is going to be like this hero, and you know, and then he goes off and like kind of gets lucky basically, and those guards that had caught him, you know, the poison finally kicks in and they all die, but then she sees him again later and she's like, wow, you destroyed those 6 guards and you were like handcuffed, like I wish I'd been there to see it, you know. And so it's just funny. It's like, and it's interesting. It's like how these stories are growing in the world is really cool to see, right? And like I think a lot of like the Mistborn books, for example, like that kind of thing happens, obviously, you know, with Kelsier and everything. So, yeah. All right. So I feel like this has been a long video, and it's mostly just been me randomly, you know, sort of just saying random things that came into my head. So I hope that some people enjoyed this. If you did, if you've read these, please leave the comment. I'd love to hear from other people that have read this stuff. And if you've read more than just these, no spoilers, please. But I mean, you know, other than some high level stuff would be welcome and fine. I'm not sure when I'm going to get to, I think like maybe Ship of Magic or something like that is like the next set of books. I'm not sure when I'm going to kind of carry on in this. Probably about to buckle down and reread the first 4 Stormlight books. That's kind of my next to read thing. So I've kind of restarted Way of Kings on Audible already, just on my commute to work and stuff, just trying to get through it. So anyway, just getting ready for Dragonsteel Nexus, book 5, Knights of Wind and Truth. It's coming out in December. So I want to reread those first 4 books, just to be ready for that. So that's my next to be read. I'm going to focus on that. I just have a few months left, so I really got to do it. But I like these a lot. I like them a lot. And I like living in this world. I want to go back into this world and spend more time there. And I want to have the skill and the wit. And I want to have Nighteyes. And I want to hang out with the Fool a little bit. Maybe the Fool would be a little too much. I don't know. That'd be fun. Yeah, it's awesome, and I'm a huge Robin Hobb fan now. I mean, I really am. I'm not sure if this is her first trilogy. I mean, I know it was 95. I mean, that was a while back, so I feel like it might have been some of her first published like novels. But you know, I can only imagine that as she's written the other 14 in this set, that like things have improved. Like, you know, some of the things that maybe I was casting some negative light on here, okay, plotting and just sort of some of the pacing. I'm sure maybe some of that stuff is kind of buttoned up and tightened up in the last 25 years. So I'm excited to read more, needless to say. So anyway, yeah, let me know what you guys think of these books, and if you liked this video, I would sure appreciate a like and a subscribe. And let me know if you'd like to see more content like this, just kind of thoughts on books and stuff. So anyway, I appreciate it. I'll see you on the next one.